Right. Okay. This is week number 3 on modern church history. And we were here last week just going over brief church history chronology and looking at where we are and reflecting on what had happened. So, Age of Reason and Revival. This will be the, after the Reformation, other than Reformation, these secular development has been one of the major influential historical period, or the things happened to Christianity. Both positive and negative. So, negative first. Negative thing is, as the age of reason deepens, and then people kind of think with the intellectual mind and science, mathematics, then development of astronology, all these things come to what we call humanism, which, today's humanism, it has two meanings, but humanism in Christianity, it means human is the center, or the center of the history, or the universe, or existence. So focus from man, God, the divinity, it becomes humanity, becomes the center of the thought, philosophy, and perspective, worldview, and so on. So there's this paradigm shift, what we now call a secularization or secular movement. So the people begin to think we can probably do without God. And also due to the negative things happen in the Dark Age through the Roman Catholic Church, and also what had happened even after the Reformation to the Christian churches, the people begin to have generally doubts and negative notion against whole thing, anything that has to do with the Christianity. And also, like a philosopher like Nietzsche declares that God is dead. So, that's what happens, negative things that happen with the age of reason. So the Enlightenment and Renaissance, it leads to humanity or humanism that puts focus on the human than the unseen God. And with also development of science, natural science, begins to deny the existence of an unnatural or supernatural world or reality. So those become the negative influence to Christian history. On the other hand, this age of reason had influenced Christian thought and Christian philosophy and Christian worldview in such a way that people begin to have put reason into the theology and the doctrine. So this is it's like a religion needs to be reasonable. Also supernatural things, even if it's a supernatural things, it need to be logical and rational and reasonable so human being can understand, because they begin to think God is He's not just God of mystery, but He is God of intellect, and He is God of reason. Thus, therefore, if God is God of reason, He must be reasonable. And we, the Christians, are also need to use the reason and rational and intellect to understand and to explain who God is and how God is. So that sort of lays a foundation for Christian intellectual, Christian or Christian intellectual. So religion without intellect or religion without reason has no longer begins to have fade away, even though still, even today in 21st century, there are religion that is without reason and are very emotional and focus on a mystery kind of phenomena only. Well, still, there's what we call mysticism in Christian practice. But the introduction or the coming of the age of reason within the Christian belief or Christianity becomes the very positive influence by Enlightenment and Renaissance. So there are always, anything that happens in the history has both positive and negative elements or effects on religion and the surrounding world. For example, Kant, the philosopher, publishes a critique of pure reason and so on. Now, age of progress begins. That's not how I defined it, but some of the material that I studied to understand the modern church history, they say they use the word age of progress. So in what terms, what kind of progress are we talking about? Does that mean the humanity or human morality or the general maturity of human being are progressing? I don't think so. We have been the same since the fall of Adam and Eve, and there's not much progress or any progress at all to my understanding. Spirituality, morality, the level of human existence in terms of relationship with God, it's been there. There's been no a progress. But it says great Christian era, and then they say age of progress in terms of the expansion of Christianity. So we see during this time the Christianity in the Europe and North America expands, while also the Catholic Church, the Roman Catholic Church, also experiences its own growth. So it's not only the Protestant church, but it's Catholic Church that grew at the same time globally, except the third world countries and the areas which were including Asia, Africa, and Latin America. These are the three areas where the Christianity had not seen the progress or any expansion until let's say, should it be late 19th or mid 20th century, depending on which position you are in. So it's until the much later where the church growth or the expansion of Christianity has happened in these Asia, Africa, and Latin American countries and regions. So let's see how this progress in the Western world, including North America, Canada, and USA, had happened. So French Revolution in the 18th century, by the end of the 18th century, which is 1789, this kind of marks the climax of the Enlightenment and Renaissance. As people are being educated and being awakened individually with the expansion of the general education, and then they were able to read and write, which means they can read the books, which means they can acquire and obtain the knowledge where they were not able to obtain before. And then also industrialization and urbanization, which brings the people into the new territory, from the farming to industry, and then from rural area to the urban cities, which give them the more opportunity for the financial stability, meaning they are being more rich than they were, and then opportunity for the education and availability of these books and the materials, the information. It naturally increases the ability for people to think in a way that they had not done before, because under the Roman Catholic Church, and also even after the Reformation, people were not privileged to have such knowledge that are available at the 18th century Europe. So basically they were absent from anything that helped them to think critically. The churches taught them to obey, and obedience usually means ignorance. So ignorance and obedience sort of went hand in hand, and people did not know much. Because they don't know much, they were under this social structure that is very, what we call hierarchy. So this pyramid-shaped kind of social structure wasn't normal until after the revolution, French Revolution, and then following democratization of England. So they're like a ruling class, and then middle class, and then peasants. It's like a basic structure, and 99% of the population were uneducated. They were under certain authorities, socially and structurally. So they were not able to have this critical thinking, even though this 99% of population were believers, because look at the Germany, France, England, Spain, Portugal, Italy, all these major European countries, not mentioning the minor ones, they were all Christian nations. And even though they were believers, their belief was very, how do you say, low level, not the depth of belief, but the knowledge about the Bible. They were not able to read the Bible until the later 16th, 17th century, where after the Reformation, the translation of the Bible became possible. But until then, the Bible was in Latin or Greek or Hebrew, which none of these peasants or people were able to read. So there was the Bible itself was a very limited commodity and limited information. But as people begin to have this opportunity through industrialization and urbanization and extension of the opportunity for education, at least the primary, they were able to read and write, then people become awakened. And then that awakeness eventually brought them to this revolution when they were oppressed, when they see the evil, they see the corruption, and they see the injustice. They became very, not just emotionally angry, but very critical, and then were able to make that determination or decision of the things that are going on up there. So, because once you are awakened and realize what is wrong and what is right, then the action does follow naturally. So it became, even though the trigger moment for the French Revolution was, as we know, it was about the basic necessity of bread. Still, it wasn't just the bread, because they had the brain as well. So bread and brain combined, it sort of kind of triggers and explodes. Then we have Bill of Rights and in England, which also has to do with the humanism, where the people become to understand their value as a human being, and also as to have this is the keyword, own determination about his or her own life. So this becomes the very part of the development in the history, where the humanism or the human center of human as the main character of the history, kind of it becomes more natural. And we have William Carey, the missionary from England, who sails for India. His story is a unique, even though there are many other missionaries. He is a missionary who is self-supported. And this kind of marks, he initially did not have any agency, and then he kind of claimed himself to be a missionary and went to India and began his work. But his work includes all kind of industries and business. So he's a unique sort of missionary, not the typical missionary that we know of. That typical missionary that we know of is a later, much later development. So William Carey is one of the missionaries that kind of self-employed, yeah, that would be the word, self-employed missionary. Then, see, only after like 4 years after the French Revolution, what we see is a festival of reason. It says de-Christianization of France. So not only the humanism becomes just a philosophical idea, but it actually make influence to the general public. After revolution, they were successful to bring the history with a revolt, which is very opposite of what we call Christian teachings, which requires you to have obedience. Rather, they revolted, and without God or help of any religion, they were successful to have a political new era. So there's as you can see, a trend of like what we call secularization, or the human being trying to be the owner of history. 1799, Schumacher publishes Lecture on Religion. It's the same thing, the same trend. So we go into early 19th century from 18th century, and then 1804, British and Foreign Bible Society formed. In spite of this, change from religious culture and the world and society to non-religious or secular culture and society, this new development is going strong on this side, thank you, while Christianity also becomes more organized and then more of systematic, scientific in a way. They begin to use the intellect and the rational, the knowledge to advance the Christian church. And one of the things that happening, like this British and Foreign Bible Society, is a mission organization formed to open or to have organized effort in the foreign mission. 1806, Samuel Mills lead haystack prayer meeting. This is one of the, most important historical event in the history of mission. If we are studying history of mission and the modern church history, you cannot study the history of church, the modern church, without studying the history of mission. So in England, the Samuel Mills, one of the students in, I believe is from Cambridge, he and others were out in the field, and suddenly the rain comes, and then they were kind of avoiding that rain in the haystack. They had this wheat. After harvesting wheat, they stack the the straws into a bundle and kind of build something like a house. It's not a house, but they build it, and they find themselves among that hay or the straw stack. And then they begin to have prayer. It was not like intended or planned. It happened by accident. As they were praying, they hear the voice of God or the call of God, and strongly felt the work of the Holy Spirit moving them to have burden over this foreign land. Because England at the time was the empire still. Still it's an empire, but very have many colonies in the outside the England. And with those geographical development and political development of England being expanded, God also moves these people to send them out to English colonies. And as a result, many missionaries become committed out of the college. What that means, the Christianity at the elite level or elite level or Christian elite who are educated, who are intellectual, who has a lot of talents, are coming to commit themselves not for the career, secular career, or any other career, but as a missionary. So that 1806 becomes the starting point for the modern missionary movement, which will result hundreds of the college students committing themselves for the Christian works overseas. So that crosses Atlantic to US, the United States, and then here the same movement happens in North America as well, Canada and then the America, USA. We'll take a look into this later on, more specific. Then Wilberforce also in the Englishman leads abolition of slave trade. So as there's a movement in North America trying to abolish the slave system itself, in England, Wilberforce, who happens to be a very committed Christian, because of his Christian values, he leads this abolition of slave trade as I think he was a prime minister, if I'm not wrong, if I'm correct. So the Christian belief and the political, the administrative decisions, it goes hand in hand together, resulting a very positive outcome in the human development or history itself. So what we are seeing here in the example of Wilberforce, and then some other leaders, not only in England but in like Netherlands, this becomes one of the major trend in Europe at the 19th century, where the religion or the Christianity is the very ideology and the value for any government, in spite of secularization that's going against Christianity. So it's a kind of a mixed thing that had happened, but the significance is that God uses his people, the Christians, to make a better society for general public, even though some of them may not be, or many of them may not be Christians. The Christian values or Christian ethics and Christian virtues become also the virtue and the principle and the values for governing the government. So that has been repeated in the history in spite of the process and the movement to separate the politic from the religion and the state against the religion. So that today is a normal, it's a kind of principal thing that the state and the church is separated, and it's not like a church trying to influence the politics, or politics have the direct exercise direct authority over the church. It does not happen today. But at the time, there was no like a fine line or line drawn between the church and the state, or religion and science, or religion and politics. So that had happened. 1810, American Board of Commissioner for Foreign Mission. It's the same development as 1804 British and the Foreign Bible Society was formed. So the Christianity, the Christian church, it begins to organize to help and to send, even to train, select, recruit and train the missionaries. And they begin to have this supporting system for professional missionaries. So their full-time job is to be a missionary. They don't need to work any like a secular work, or the general work, just like William Carey did. So there's no longer need for that. And then, so again, in America also, just as much as in England, having to have professional missionaries becomes more normal. But prior to that, did you know that each local churches kind of selected their own missionaries and sent them out without having the so-called mission agencies? So it's not a mission agencies are not like a long history, but it's only 100 some years old thingy. Now going into mid-19th century, Finney's lecture on revival. This Finney, Michael Finney, yeah, he is one of the known revivalists in America. And the Livingstone sails for Africa. So, like a Livingstone, and then Schweizer. I'm not sure if Schweizer is the missionary in today's definition, but he did claim that he went to Africa for the spiritual reasons. But so now they begin to see this colonial territories as mission field. So the idea of, awakening or bringing these savages, it's not a good word. We don't use that anymore because it's politically incorrect. But these savages to Christianity, it becomes a mandate and it becomes something of value. You know what? The English people, the white people, at the time, the most Europeans are white people. They didn't think the people from Africa or Latin America or Asia as human beings. See, so they were not concerned about these savages who are like animals. And didn't think they were needed to be converted to Christianity, but these new development in the 19th century begins to see them as the very important subject of missions. So if you compare this Protestant mission awakening to the that of Roman Catholic Church has the very early history of foreign missions, even though these missions has to do with a very political the development of colonization, yet they did bring the religion with their colonization and colony. So that might be a little different. So we see the Catholic Church has a more early history of missions than the Protestant Church. You hardly find any significant material from these reformers. After the Reformation did not have a very focus or the emphasis on the foreign mission as we do today. So that gives a very good comparison between the Catholic Church and the Protestant Church at the beginning of a Protestant Church. Okay, Kierkegaard writes philosophical fragments, and Marx published Communist Manifesto. That happens in 1848. As you know, what happens? Karl Marx and Engels both are born and raised in a Christian home, and then very ironically, Karl Marx's idea of communism, it comes from the Bible itself, the Acts. As he read the Acts, he kind of, it enlightens him. Why can we share the things evenly so the world can have no classification, no poor to the wealthy and poor kind of structure? And he thought of it, and he began to research, and he writes a book on it. So Karl Marx, he gives this idea for the new world, new government, new paradigm, sort of. The idea was, it's a pretty good idea. It's very ideal, though. It's still a good idea. And his intention was not like to, have any like tyrant monopoly system, but later on it develops in otherwise. Okay, let's take a 10 minutes break and come back.